Hello, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, featuring today's top directors sharing behind-the-scenes stories of their latest films and insights into the craft of directing. Please take a second to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. This episode takes us behind the scenes of director Quentin Tarantino's new crime drama, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Set in Los Angeles during the waning years of Hollywood's golden age, the film weaves together multiple storylines, following fading television actor Rick Dalton, his stunt double Cliff Booth, and his neighbor Sharon Tate during the months leading up to one fateful night in August 1969. In addition to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Mr. Tarantino's credits include the feature films The Hateful Eight, Reservoir Dogs, Jackie Brown, Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2, Death Proof, Django Unchained, and episodes of the television series ER and CSI. He was nominated for the DGA Award for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Feature Film and the Academy Award for Best Director for 1994's Pulp Fiction and 2009's Inglourious Basterds. Following a recent screening of the film at the Harmony Gold Theater in Los Angeles, Mr. Tarantino spoke with director Paul Thomas Anderson about filming Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. During their conversation, he talks about working with stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, and Margot Robbie, realizing the film's major sequence set at the real-life Spahn Ranch, and dealing with the audience's knowledge of Sharon Tate's murder as the film's dramatic engine.
Oh.
Yeah, you guys were a good audience. Thanks.
Hi, Quentin.
Hello.
This is the most magnificent film. I have seen it for, I think, 4.5 times now. And I have so much to ask you. I'm sure everybody does. But first, just to tell you, I think I've told you before, but one of the things I love about this movie is how much joy there is in it. Just pure joy. And your movies always have the joy of making the movie, and they're always filled with that. But there's something else going on here in this movie that you haven't had before. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's like the world's expert made a movie about the thing he knows most about, which is the movies, this city, and the humanity of it is so beautiful.
That's actually, you know, it's funny that you're saying that. I mean, there was like, I mean, you're saying something nice. Of course, I'm agreeing with it, but I mean, but there is this weird aspect when I was kind of writing the movie after I kind of figured out a couple things and I was kind of really flowing on it. You know, I just spent my whole life putting all this junk into my head. And so when I had to think about what Rick's career would be, or almost any moment of who he could have worked with, or a parallel career that could have been like his, or a situation like that, or anybody these dudes would have known or come across. And same thing with Sharon, that it was just like, I mean, it was just right there.
Yeah.
I didn't have to look up it.
Right.
It was just right there. And it was like, wow, I'd spent my whole life putting this stuff in my head, maybe just for this movie.
Right. That's right.
Because at a certain point, it was like after, like, with IMDb came out, I go, man, I spent my whole life knowing this shit.
Yeah.
And now any jerk in the world, all right, well, why didn't you bring up that Galen Ross was in blah, 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 you know?
But there's only one person that can make that fucking movie. Okay, I'll start at the back, and maybe you've been asked this before, but at what point did you discover your ending? Or did you know it when you started? Did you know what your end zone was, or did you find it along the way?
It's not been asked as a direct question like that. Here's the thing. When it came to, I definitely had, like the first thing, I had the Cliff character, the stuntman character, and then I knew it was going to be with a 50s, early 60s. A Western star actor. So I hadn't figured out exactly who that guy was, but I mean, he's one of like 6 or 7 dudes.
Yeah.
So I had the idea of them, not the story, not anything like that. And so, okay, so I have those two guys, and I knew I was going to put, and I kind of knew I was going to put him right next to Sharon Tate. And so, okay, so then Lily, officially, the first story thing I came up with was the end. Everything else was working backwards. It's the only time I've ever done that. I've never just come up with an end.
Right.
And then came up with a whole story to justify the ending.
Fantastic. Okay, but so then backing up a little bit from that, when did you find that portion of how the film has ended up, which is basically it's a day in the life?
Yeah.
Yes, there's this kind of chunk that we leap towards and we take. But how much were you sort of figuring out what the hell is this, and then kind of happen upon, because this is a day in the life movie, as the way that you were going to tell it?
Well, it's fun because it's like, I mean, look, normally I kind of write my scripts as if they're kind of novels anyway, but this one was really that way because I kept working on it for years and just kept putting it away.
Right.
And I just kind of pushed the rock up the hill a little bit further in between each project. And the benefit of that was I was able to explore a zillion different things about all the things that could happen to Rick and could happen to Cliff. And trust me, a lot of shit has happened in their life that I didn't get around to show you. If I ever, just Cliff in the war. Okay, that's all that, I mean, that's 5 movies.
Right.
Cliff in World War II, that's 5 movies, all right? In fact, I started even thinking today, well, why didn't he get back from Italy? Why doesn't Rick play Cliff in a fucking movie about World War II?
That's good.
Yeah,
I'd see that.
That'd be a cool thing. Combat Cliff. All right. But the thing is, though, I ended up, but because of that, so I figured out all these things about the character and kind of really got to know them. And then at a certain point, when I was kind of ready to go, it was like, okay, well, now, Quentin, okay, now hold on for a second now. You're the master here. What story do you want to tell? Mm-hmm. You know the guys, you know the milieu, you know the entire environment, and you know your ending. Mm-hmm. So what do you want to tell? And I was like, I don't think I really want to put them through some melodramatic plot. I mean, I had come up with a couple of things like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I was to make it more of a movie plot, it would, it wouldn't be a movie plot. It would be more like an Elmer Leonard novel. And these guys almost seem like Elmer Leonard characters almost, So it would be kind of an Elmer Leonard-y kind of thing, and maybe the family would have been a little bit more involved.
Right.
But then I thought about it and I go, no, I think I just want to do a day in the life. I think the characters are strong enough to hold it. I think the characters are strong enough to hold it. And it all comes down to that. If the characters weren't strong enough to hold it, then it wouldn't work.
Right.
But I think the character's strong enough to hold it. I think the milieu is strong enough to hold it. I think the environment and the minutia is strong enough to hold it. And even coming from the idea of it, I mean, it is a genre film because it's a movie about making movies, and that's its own genre. But when most people think of genre when it comes to me, they're thinking of action genre of some type. Mm-hmm. And so it's not that. Mm-hmm. It takes place in a real world where, just regular things, all right, regular days happen. Yet, it's punctuated with these action scenes from Rick's movies.
Right.
I mean, I always thought that was a thing. Wow, I'm kind of giving you action scenes. They're just, isolated, and they're all these different genres. And
right.
It's kind of the idea that actually Richard Rush had with The Stuntman about doing a comic paranoid a study of a black comedy about paranoia.
Right.
All right. But he could commit to it 100% because he had all those big action scenes for his World War I movie. It seemed like World War I was all happening around that hotel, all right, but I thought I could open it up a little bit.
El Coronado Hotel.
Yeah, like the entire World War would just move out of the hotel and World War I's over, all right. But the idea behind that I thought was really interesting, so I thought I could pull that off, and then the idea was if these characters are strong enough, they can hold it. I can do a day in the life, but also, and this was the tricky part, is we know about Sharon's murder. Mm-hmm. So that's going to happen. Whether I show it or not, it's going to happen. Even if I stop in February, even if I ended the movie August 7th, all right, that's going to happen. And most of the audience members are going to know that. And so that can act as a dramatic motor because it's going, the shoe this horrible shoe will drop.
Right.
And every scene in the movie is taking you closer to that shoe. And, but that's a weird thing, all right? That's like, I got to pull that off. I mean, it could not work, or it could work and maybe it's in bad taste, or maybe you don't earn it, all right? Or maybe it's just fucking creepy, Now, that was interesting to try to write that, though. Now, if I felt that was the case, if it felt exploitive, I wouldn't have done it. But I didn't mind risking that. I wanted to try that. I wanted to try this chancy material. And I had a few examples. I had a few other, precedents of that. I mean, to some degree, to some degree, Zodiac kind of plays similar games. Hell, for some degree, Titanic plays similar games. The fucking ship's going to hit the iceberg and all these real people are going to fucking die.
Right.
And he kind of playing the same game I am. Like you start getting into the movie and getting into the characters, and now you don't want the ship to hit the iceberg. So that was the plan.
Right. Just working backwards a little bit still. There's a great. I was kind of reminded of when I read the Cormac McCarthy's book, No Country for Old Men. Cormac McCarthy's the kind of writer where there's a moment where he just takes care of some fucking detail that you think, I never would have remembered that. And there's a moment where he takes care of a horse that's dying. He just goes over to take care of it. And I remember thinking that fucking Quentin took care of the neon signs, in LA. Like, you stopped a minute to even take care of that, which, living in this city, it's such a beautiful moment when that happens. When the sun's just going down and it's come on, and that the Stones' Out of Time is playing. Yeah. And I leaned over to you now, and I was just like, it just breaks my fucking heart. It absolutely breaks my heart, because you feel that inevitable coming. That song is playing. And you said that had been rummaging around with you for a while, that song, kind of looking for a home.
No, not that song, Looking for a Home. That idea of that montage. For years, that exact montage, all right? Yeah. With the neon going on and ending with El Coyote, and then the sadness of them pulling up to El Coyote and everything.
Yeah.
And I don't really like to use songs that are right on the money, so I was almost even questioning, is that too on the money? And then, it's sadness. It's sadness earned it.
Absolutely.
It's weird egalic timing and the sadness involved in it.
Yeah. Right. No, it's quite beautiful. Okay, so go back now. Let's go into the Spawn Ranch sequence, which is so unbelievably done. It's so long, and I'm not saying long in a bad way. I'm saying it continues on, and it keeps pulling the string, and it takes you places that you do not expect. I mean, certainly in Bruce Dern as George Spawn's reaction and that dialogue between them, that is just like two great actors.
It's really great to watch those guys together.
I mean, damn, they're both so great in that. Can you kind of play through a little bit of how you map that sequence out? Because it doesn't seem like you could have just gotten there for that one and put the pieces together. The sunlight is always low. It feels.
You don't mean writing. You mean directing.
I mean directing.
Yeah.
Which, right, and your scripts usually are very written out very specifically, but that one seems, I mean, we're at the DGA, the fake DGA.
Yeah, no, that makes it, no, what you're saying makes sense. I mean,
even the dogs are fucking directed. I mean, talk about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was one of those, well, actually, that might be a good way to start it off, because the thing is, there's this really great story about Francis Ford Coppola doing all the whole Robert Duvall sequences in Apocalypse Now. And, they're using the helicopters to the Filipino airport, and he's paying for everything himself, and this just all the incredible pressures of trying to do this, almost unimaginable. But him and Victoria Storaro come up with realized, much to his horrible chagrin, because he needs to get footage shot, much to his horrible chagrin, that if the helicopters aren't in the background, it just doesn't work. It just dead. You can't have just the helicopters a little bit. After you've established the helicopters have to be flying in the air behind every single solitary shot. Okay, no, I didn't quite have as much of a problem as Francis Ford Coppola did, but I did tell the people, I go, look, if there's any shot in Spawn Ranch, I need to have a dog in the background. I mean, there can never be a shot that I don't see a dog doing something, because that was kind of what it was like. They had a lot of dogs there, you know, and that means the place is alive.
Yeah.
That means it's living. That means it's crawling. That means it's got fleas. You know, and that means it's scrounging. And it's just there's a movement. There's always movement going on. The place is alive, and there's always some living thing running from one pile of trash to another.
Right.
In the background, just keep it going. The thing about directing that, well, it was one of those like hard sequences where like you were like, okay, well, this is kind of one of the cornerstones of the movie. And in this movie, more than most, because part of the thing is kind of doing a non-story movie for most of it. And the closest thing to a story is when he goes to Spawn Ranch. There is that aspect when you're watching the movie, oh, shit, we've been like heading here the entire time. I didn't realize it until now. Here we are. And actually, maybe the story, maybe the movie had a story. And it's about getting him here. And so, it worked. I had a terrific group of actors, and I had it worked really good on the page. So now it's mine to fuck up, and it's almost so big. How do you even start that?
Yeah.
And so we just shot it in. I gave myself 2 weeks. I gave myself 2 weeks to shoot there completely uninterrupted, and then a little bit of leeway if I needed, maybe even as much up to 4 days if I had to. Right. All right. And I figured that would be enough. I didn't think if that was too much, but I figured that would be enough. And I tried not to use those 4 days. But the point being, though, was to not really work out anything. Mm-hmm. The point was I had maybe one of the best sets I've ever had in my life. I mean, I thought Barbara Ling and Nancy Hyatt did just a fantastic job with Spawn Ranch, and it looked so amazing. I couldn't believe it.
The whole movie. I mean, the whole fucking movie.
But that place just seemed like it was eerie, creepy, but how great it was. And then the actors were fantastic. And I've never had a group of actors. I didn't really work with young people that much. I never worked with a group of young actors where I didn't all that body language that they had. I didn't have to teach them fucking shit. You know, they just knew all that Spawn Ranch. They just knew all that Manson stuff, that family stuff. They all worked all that stuff out together, and they just, boom, it was just right there. And so then it was literally, we just put the camera on the crane and just keep inventing the shots and doing it in order, so in case something cool happens or we do something neat or whatever, now we can continue on with it.
Right.
And so everything will build to everything else.
Right.
And so it was just kind of like just steady as she goes.
Right.
Just boom, boom, boom. As I'm doing it, if I'm going to get an idea for something like maybe a section that's like three days from now. Well, now because I'm little by little, I'm just working to get to the house. That's all I'm doing. I'm just trying to get across this whole giant lot and get Brad in the house. All right. Now, as I'm heading towards the house and as I'm heading there, I'm thinking about stuff coming up. And now any equipment I might need for a special shot or anything I need to get this big fucking rusty pickup truck out of the way. So we need to do something else, or I need the crane pointed that way, and I need to point it that way all fucking day. So I got to do but all those things I would need to do that either new ideas are coming to me or things I want to manipulate. Because I'm working that way, I get you. Then we're in the house, and then everything is about in the house. We didn't shoot that on a stage; that was there,
that house.
You know. And then now I got to get him out of the house and back to the car. And so everything was just about just following. Just literally narratively and cinematically moving Brad through there. Right. This is probably why it was so long, actually, if you think about it, because it just held. Yeah. It just held. Yeah. Like the longer it was, the scarier it seemed. Right. But I kind of believe that about suspense. I think, that was the trick I learned on Inglourious Bastards with the basement scene. I was like, wow, this is crazy long, but it seems like it's working, and then if if it is working, well, then the longer it is, the more suspenseful it will be.
Well, I mean, I think anybody that's in here watching this film that's been trained by seeing something that you've done before would expect that if they were to try to get ahead of you, would expect that to end with Dakota Fanning pulling a gun, some kind of gunfire, perhaps, if you sort of try to predict it. And what's so beautiful about it is that it ends up with these two guys desperately trying to reconnect on that bed. Yeah. And, of course, it does take a turn with the fella who gets the kicked out of him in 125th.
Yeah, but even like that, I think the Manson family's not even presented they're pretty creepy, but a lot of their creepiness is what we're bringing to the party. I mean, they actually show that they kind of take care of George. Everything they say is exactly the truth. He is taking a nap. He's absolutely fine. All right. What's your fucking problem? You care that she's going down on him? What do you care? Get out of here. I actually had a scene where they were talking and he goes, so, because he makes some crack about her having sex with him, and she goes, "What do you care if I have sex with him? Were you his friend?"
That's good.
He goes, "Yeah, you have a point. I'll get out of
here." So you're working with like an Andy McLaughlin type budget on this one, then? I mean, that's a Kurt Russell joke, right? So, did anybody catch that? The Andy McLaughlin joke. I think that's my favorite moment in the movie, the one that I've been doing over and over again. I like fiddle with my sunglasses, and then I just say, I don't dig him, and I don't dig the vibe. Yeah. What was it, some kind of beef between you guys? He killed his fucking wife. Can you give a particular shout out to Rebecca Gayheart as the wife, who is so
terrific.
Fantastic.
Yeah, she's really wonderful.
In a movie with like a billion great performances.
Yeah. I actually needed a couple of people that you can just have 10 seconds and you get a sense of their character, you get a sense of their marriage, you get a sense of everything. Just a brief flash.
I think you do that every step of the way. Everybody you've got in this cast. So getting to the heavy hitters, in that with Brad and Leo and Margot, I mean, that was yours to fuck up as well, because that is just the dream scenario of the three of them together. Let's talk about Brad first, because to me there's something, whatever it is in terms of time and where he is in his career and this part, whatever the fuck it is, it's just magical seeing him on screen. He's so soulful, right? I mean,
he's great.
Like mouth, like saliva, like drooling out of your mouth, watching what he was giving you. It must have just been like, how the fuck did I end up here?
Brad, more than anybody else I've ever shot, Brad has this aspect that when you look through the viewfinder at him, you feel like you're sitting at the Cinerama Dome watching the movie, all right? And like you're not on a set of Fairfax and cars are driving by you. You feel like you're in a movie theater as you're looking at him in the viewfinder, because it just feels like a movie. Yeah. When you see him in a good movie. Yeah. An interesting thing I was thinking about it this week. It's fun when your movie's playing in the theater. It's been like this fourth weekend, and so it's like people talking about it. So I've been thinking about it, and I've been watching it with different audiences, and kind of been hearing people talk about it. So it's made me think about stuff, and it's interesting thing that's made me turn my opinion on the character a little bit, Cliff, is me and Brad, I actually remember bringing up to Brad, I go, look, I think you would be a fantastic Cliff, but I think you're too handsome for Cliff. I don't see Cliff that handsome. I mean, if he was that handsome, why isn't he an actor? I mean, I don't know. And Brad was, yeah, I know what you mean, you know. Not him saying that, talking good about himself, but just understanding the arc of a character. He knows what fucking stunt guys look like, you know, and so I go, yeah, I mean, I want to just put a big fucking like scar right across your face, but I can't do that because I've done that already. He goes, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I do it too. I go, yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, you can fuck up my body. And yeah, well, we're going to do that. Don't worry about that, you know. Now, I can't imagine Cliff not being like the most handsome guy in Hollywood. I mean, it's like such a part of his character. It's such a part of who he is. It's such a part of this kind of Zen quality that he has. It's just who he is. The fact that like every girl who sees him, like, you know, he flirts with and she flirts back, you know, like Bogart in The Big Sleep. I mean, it's like, you know, that is a kind of who he is. He should be the most handsome guy on a set. And he still can't get fucking work.
It all makes perfect sense to me. I mean, no,
but it's really interesting. No, but but through sheer force of his will and his personality and his performance and his character, I have changed my mind on that. I mean, I can't even imagine the guy who said that stuff before.
No.
And that guy was right, but he was wrong.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't seen that.
Yeah. Leo, who is like, consistently, when he decides to be the fucking funniest actor in Hollywood, you know, he's just, you know, right when he like flips that switch.
Yeah. But truly, what's so funny about him is he's not playing it funny. He's playing it so fucking serious.
Absolutely.
And that's what's so ridiculous.
Yeah. No, his full commitment to that. Yeah. Sexy Hamlet.
Yeah.
And just briefly before we get to Margot, talk about my favorite performance in the movie is Nicholas.
Nicholas Hammond. Yeah.
Nicholas Hammond as Sam Wanamaker. Yeah. The director who comes to him and says, "I don't want fucking Rick Dalton."
Yeah. I want you to see Caleb.
Exactly. And then Leo's fantastic moment. He says, "We're gonna do something about your hair." Whoa, something about my hair.
Whoa. Yeah, what? Whoa. It's like going to Ed Burns. All right, okay, we're gonna do it about your hair. Hair. That's fucking what I do.
Yeah. That's why you brought me in here.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
For those of you that don't know, he was in The Sound of Music.
Yeah, he's one of the kids in The Sound of Music. He's one of the kids in Lord of the Flies. He actually is he's the star of the Spider-Man live-action TV show from the 70s. Any you Skyjack fans out there? He's on the plane in Skyjack.
That is a terrific scene. Let's talk about Margot and how you got so lucky because she's just amazing. I mean, she's always been amazing.
Well, yeah, it's one of those weird things where it's like I've had some thoughts in my head about, like, because it's been in my mind for such a long time. It was like, not did I do right, did I do wrong, nothing like that. But it was more like, now if I had just barreled down and did this 6 years ago, what would that have been like? As far as like the reaction or how people would have looked at it, and if I did it 3 years ago, what would that have been like? And they're doing it now, what that would be like. And that's actually kind of an interesting little thought game, you know, to play, especially when you're talking about a period piece, because this period ain't going anywhere, you know. So it's just kind of just interesting. But the thing that makes it always kind of collapse a little bit, of like, no, this is definitely the right time, is because I can't imagine any other time I would have had Margot. You know, because, you know, it's just, you know, just where it was just so easy to do it with her. And she would, you know, she was terrific. And I just can't imagine the movie without Margot.
So did you have this, so you've had this rummaging around in your mind, or were you just playing that game of imagining if you'd had it 6 or 7 years ago?
No. I've been working on it for about 6 years. I think I started working on it little by little. I mean, little by little, really, but like sometime after Death Proof. So I've been working on it since after Death Proof. I remember, I think it was like, I think the first, I wrote a couple chapters as a novel. It was the first breaking ice on it. I remember doing that at the Austin Hotel during Death Proof times. I remember that.
Right. I remember a couple years ago, no, it must have been about 6 or 7 years ago, you told me you had a Paul Revere and the Raiders, a movie that you were going to use some Paul Revere music.
Yeah, that's one.
That must be it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so it's just, she's such a force of nature. She's such a force of nature on her own, and she's such a force of just light and goodwill on her own. Margot, she just shooting with her is just so much fun, and I mean, literally, it just reminds me of me being on Reservoir Dogs shooting with her, because she's just so happy to be there and so excited about everything, and I am always excited about everything, but I'm even more excited when she's around.
I bet. Well, I really liked your choice that you made of, here you have this film where Leo's on the screen or on the TV as, it's Leo. But I loved that you used Sharon Tate, to see Margot Robbie watching Sharon Tate.
Well, that was always my plan, but the thing about it is, with Margot, I knew I would be able to pull it off.
Well, it's just so moving,
that's how I thought. One of my favorite things in the whole movie is I can now honestly say, along with one other movie I won't say watch. All right, I can now honestly say that the movie that I have seen that I don't like the most is The Wrecking Crew. It's a really bad comedy, but she's really good in it. And it was on TV the other day, and I watched it for about a good 40 minutes just to watch Sharon in it. And one of the things that makes me so tickled is one, we get to see her in it. We get to see how she's funny, and then we get to see her special spark. But one of the things I love is that normally when she does her little pratfall and she falls in the lobby, she gets a laugh. In our theater, the audience laughs in our theater, and I'm always. It's actually the laugh that I'm looking forward to the most. I'm saying, is Sharon going to get a laugh in our theater when she does a pratfall? And she almost always does. I'm very happy for her.
Oh. I mean, we are, like the Rolling Stone says, out of time. But just to think that it was 50 years ago, and Sunday night, about a week past when it would have been, and obviously we would have been living in a very different mood in this city, but I have to say, one of the things that's been so incredibly gratifying, all right, about this whole experience for these last 4 weeks and everything is, it's interesting because I tried to not turn Sharon into a Quentin Tarantino character. All right. And if Rick is a Quentin Tarantino character, Cliff is a Quentin Tarantino character. Yeah, and even like my other kid, McQueen is a bit of a Quentin character. But in a way, I didn't want Sharon to be a character. I wanted her to be the person that she is. Now, it's only my interpretation of the person from what I've learned about it, and I'm definitely leaning into all the bright and the light stuff. But that really seems to be who she is. If there's other aspects of her out there, I didn't find it. But the thing was about her being not a character, the real person, and she was almost supposed to represent normalcy. In the thing. She doesn't have any plot to do. We're just kind of watching her live her life, because that's kind of what was robbed from her, was living her life. And the fact that she's a person consigned to history for the most part, defined completely and utterly by her tragic death. Yeah. And in these last 4 weeks, people have watched Margot play this character, and they've watched, I just call her a character, watched her play this person, and they saw that she was more than that, and she was a lovely person, and they get a sense of her spirit, and they get a sense of her life, and you actually watch her doing her things that people do in a life, running errands, driving the car, just doing life stuff, all right? And you even got to see Sharon in the real Sharon. Juxtaposed into that and everything. And now I actually think people will think about her differently than they thought before. It's not the beginning and end all of Sharon. All right. There's still more to learn about her and everything. But as far as I think saving her from her tombstone, the movie has kind of done that to a small degree, but I think a significant degree. Let's end it there. Thank you very much, everybody. Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Well said.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. If you'd like to hear more, you can find past episodes of The Director's Cut wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow cinephiles find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.